Alright, so here's how you start. You just print the model and tape it on a vertical drawing board. This model is a Bargue Plate. It comes from a 19th century drawing course, once forgotten, now commonly used in modern ateliers. I've already recommended the book plenty of time on this channel. If you don't know yet, you should have it, but you can also download the printer-friendly clean image on my website, and you can start right now. This drawing is supposed to be done side size, which is a great technique for figurative drawing and painting. To make it short, the drawing and the model are placed side by side vertically, and an observation spot is placed 2 or 3 steps away from the easel. Yes, you're supposed to be standing up, even better, moving back and forth from your easel. Forget about sitting down. Your entire body will be involved in this exercise. It takes some getting used to because you have basically 2 different positions: a drawing position close to the board and an observation position, and you don't do both at the same time. You're supposed to observe and compare the side-size drawing when you're back at your spot and step closer to draw, then repeat and go back and forth like this. It's difficult at first, but it's much better for accuracy, and that's what we're looking for here: realistic shapes and accurate proportions. That's what you want to go for if you want to improve your figurative skills. See, I didn't go to art school, I had to learn on my own, and this is how I started, following atelier teachings at home. Nowadays, I mostly teach oil painting, and most of my YouTube videos are about painting. My courses are about painting. My Patreon as well has mostly painting videos, and I receive many messages and questions from people struggling to paint, asking me, how do I control the shapes? How do I keep the proportions right, etc. But you have to be aware that I didn't start with paint. I started with drawing, and with this exercise in particular, and this is what helped me become a better painter. And I'm not saying that it's the only right way to start, but if you're self-taught like me, and if ultimately you want to paint figurative paintings, I think this approach can help a lot, starting with drawing. It helped me when I first started, and in fact, you can see it in the video, it goes way back. I was much younger, more innocent. I make art full time now, and I owe a lot to this exercise, and not this drawing specifically, but this exercise. When I first started, I didn't have a lot of material, but with this, it's not a real problem. The gear is super simple. Drawing quality paper, 3 pencils, 2B, HB, and 2H, a kneaded eraser, and a DIY plumb line. You can start with very little material, and your first big investment might be an easel, an H-frame easel that can fit a 90-degree drawing board, or if you don't have the money yet, straight up just tape the model and the subject on a wall. It's less convenient, but it also works. One important thing you have to keep in mind is that the goal of this type of drawing is not to be artistic or creative, but to build your skills with what could be called figurative discipline. So it's not always fun and relaxing. It's a very demanding practice, and you want to really push yourself to be as accurate as possible. Sure, if you listen to the word discipline, you might think, well, that's not how art is made. Of course, but as I said, the goal right here is not to be artistic, but to build solid skills that will allow you later to be more artistic. Think of it like this. Art is like playing a game of football or whatever sport you prefer. And this is like exercising, a workout at the gym. It's like a workout for your brain and your eye. You make your vision stronger so that when you play the actual game, you can do things with more ease and more confidence. Personally, now that I make art as a living, I almost never use the size technique anymore. However, I still have the benefits of what it taught me back then. Basically, it helped me train my brain so that drawing and painting accurately becomes automatic for me. So now I can be confident that the proportions and values will be correct. Or if they aren't, that I'll figure it out quickly. And all I have to do is focus on the actual artistic side of the project, like the composition, the colors, the brushwork, etc. The good stuff, you know. The main benefit of this exercise is the focus on trial and error. I often talk about this modification and correction. It forces you to make a mark and then verify and correct if needed. And that's how most figurative, realistic art is made. You can't achieve immediate likeness in a portrait, for example. You have to start with a small guess and check if it was right, then keep it or correct it depending on your observation. In a normal setting, most artists draw and paint for hours and then just take the time to make their checks at the end. Like, this is what an inexperienced artist would make, for example, or an artist that's not into figuration. With this technique, the checks are done constantly throughout the process, because every time that you have to go back to your observation point, you can check and compare the model and the subject. So you draw a little bit and then you step back and check the model, draw a little bit more, check again, draw a little bit more, check again, draw again, step back, etc., etc. It's kind of annoying at first to move back and forth like this. It's like physically straining, and it's just weird at first. If you've only drawn on a table in the past and you have to do that, it's kind of exhausting and annoying. But what matters is not that your legs get tired, is that your brain can multiply its ability for visual comparison by 10 without getting tired. And that's the whole point, and that's why this technique is so great. Okay, so now that you know why the size technique can help you become a more skilled artist, let's talk about it on a more technical level. As I said earlier, it's a demanding technique and it doesn't feel natural at first, but once you get used to it, everything flows very naturally. If you want to try this technique at home, you have to be aware that it will require a couple of things from you. First requirement is time. This technique requires time, a lot of it. Contrary to the common idea of a quick drawing, you want to change your mindset about time. It's not a sketch, it's not a quick drawing session. It is a complete long-term project. For a beginner, a drawing like this could take between 15 and 30 hours, but it could be even more, whatever it takes. The subject has to look like a perfect copy of the model before you can call it done. That's the objective. And that's the discipline we were talking about. It's tough. It's not for everyone. But if you really want to paint realistic looking paintings, things like portraits, it's necessary. Just like practicing scales on a piano, it's not fun, it's not artistic, it's not musical, but it helps a lot for when it's time to play some real music. So if you want to try, it can be a good idea at first to start with short 20 or 30 minute sessions that you can time with short breaks, and increase the number of sessions that you do each day as you progress and as it starts feeling better and better. Second requirement is space. The model and the subject have to be side by side, and the observation spot is not supposed to move for the entire duration of the project, which can be pretty long, as we've seen. You can't really use this technique successfully if you have to pack your gear and fold your easel after each session. The easel needs to stay in place and have a dedicated spot, so think carefully about that before you start. You also want to pick the right spot with enough good quality light. That's very important. Third requirement, posture. The position of your body is going to be the determining factor in the success of this exercise. Your observation point should always be the same. So mark the spot on your floor with a piece of tape. You can even mark the position of each individual foot. Try to have a nice, stable balance and posture, and stand up straight every time you look at the model from your viewing spot. The most unnatural thing about this technique is that you're not supposed to observe the model when you're at your drawing spot. So you have one position for drawing and one position for viewing, which is back. What you want to avoid by doing this is to have angle distortions due to perspective when you look at your model. With a flat 2D model like this one, doesn't make a big difference and you can somehow be done. The real point of this technique is somehow to transition to actual models in volume, like plaster casts, something 3D, or actually a real person sitting there and posing for you. And in this case, the position from the viewing point and from the drawing point are completely different. With a flat printed model, you can technically draw and look from the same close-up spot, but you still get a nasty perspective distortion that your brain has to compensate for. You don't think about it, but actually your eyes see things in perspective and your brain has to put everything flat again. And that's what we are trying to get rid of. We want to limit the number of visual nuisances that make visual comparisons less efficient, because that's what figurative art is all about, visual comparisons. Here's the process simplified for you. When you draw or paint from a model, you need to first look at the model, memorize what you saw, and apply modifications to your subject. Basically, the eye movement from the model to the subject just takes a second, and picking up the brush or the pencil takes another second, but it only takes a fraction of this time to forget everything. And when you finally have your pencil or your brush ready in your hand, it's all blurry again and you don't know what to do, because this visual information is so abstract and it's not something that we can really conceptualize, so it can vanish very rapidly. The goal of this exercise is to maximize the visual memory potential of your brain, like growing muscle during a workout. And the final requirement of this technique is dedication. It won't happen in a day. Building a solid artistic foundation is not easy. It requires time and constant effort. If you plan on doing this as a one-time thing, you'll probably not get a whole lot out of it. It's a long-term thing. But think of it as practice to build up visual strength. It will pay off eventually. You're going to need patience, lots of it. So make it fun. Art is long, it takes time. It takes a lot of time to make good quality figurative art. Sure, you can make a bad drawing very quickly, but if you want something more convincing, more realistic, or even more artistic, you need to be patient. This dedication is what makes great art. Try to have a bite-sized strategy, achieve a little bit every day and have fun doing it. Be persistent if you struggle. Push past the frustration you might face in the first few days. And after a while, it becomes much more enjoyable. And it's a sign that your brain is now somehow relaxing and getting into automatic mode. For example, when you start being able to draw with music or even with a podcast in the background, it means that your brain is getting used to the process and it becomes less demanding in terms of concentration. And that's when things starts becoming easy. It doesn't happen right away, but once you reach this point, it's a good time from there. you can get lost in your thoughts, you can daydream, you can imagine, and you can start thinking creatively, which is the whole point. So yeah, this is how I started with just this book, and it helped me a lot. So I can only recommend that you give it a try if you're into figurative art. And of course, what worked for me isn't necessarily going to work for you. As a self-taught artist, it's up to you to decide what to do and what to work on. But starting with this type of practice, drawing especially, can only be beneficial in my opinion. Don't be surprised if the beginnings are difficult, and try to see your progression over the long term, even the very long term. The purpose of this video was really to show you that it's possible to use simple atelier exercises for self-taught progression. Even if you don't follow through, you'll have learned a lot from the first exercises that you do, as long as you know that you've learned enough to just get started with your art projects. That's all that matters. Ultimately, the most important step is always the first one. You just get started and make art, and you'll figure things out later. Obviously, there would be a lot more things to talk about regarding the drawing process itself, but I covered this in my Teach Yourself to Draw series, covering everything there is to know about setup, proportions, and likeness. So if you haven't watched it yet, you can click here next. All right, joy and inspiration to you, my friends. Bye.